In 1964, Ford released a car nobody truly believed in. It was smaller than most American cars, cheaper than its competitors, and completely unlike anything Detroit had ever built before. Many people called it a failure before it even hit the showroom floor. Too small, too cheap, too strange for an America that had grown up on massive chrome-covered cruisers. But something happened. Something nobody saw coming. Because within just 18 months, Ford had sold over 1 million Mustangs. Teenagers wanted one. Soldiers coming home wanted one. Hollywood celebrities wanted one. Housewives wanted one. Teachers, mechanics, college students. The Mustang didn't just become successful. It became a symbol. A symbol of freedom, youth, power, and America itself. But the story of the Mustang was never just about horsepower. It was about the rise of American confidence, the golden age of Detroit, the collapse of the muscle car era, oil crises, corporate mistakes, and the slow disappearance of old America. By the early 1960s, America was changing faster than it ever had before. The Second World War was behind them. The economy was growing at a pace nobody had ever seen. Industrial production had reached its peak. Suburbs were spreading across the entire country. New homes, new schools, new shopping centers. Highways stretched for thousands of miles connecting cities, states, and the lives of ordinary people. And for the first time in history, young Americans had money of their own. Teenagers had suddenly become one of the most powerful consumer forces in the country. They wanted music. They wanted fashion. They wanted their own way of life. And they wanted cars, but Detroit was still building vehicles for a different generation. Enormous sedans, heavy chrome-plated barges, cars designed for fathers and mothers. Not for young people. Most American cars looked monumental, expensive, formal, safe, like living rooms on wheels built for middle-aged comfort. Ford understood something important. Young Americans didn't want safe, they wanted excitement. They wanted freedom. They wanted speed. And most importantly, they wanted something that felt like their own. Not their parents, not corporate, not boring, theirs. America was entering a new era. Rock and roll exploded out of television sets and radio speakers. Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, Buddy Holly. Drive-in theaters became cultural landmarks. Young couples drove in, watched movies, listened to music. Long highways connected the country like never before. Route 66 was no longer just a road, it was a dream. Car culture was becoming part of the American identity itself, and Ford knew exactly how powerful that force could become. Inside Ford Motor Company, one man believed America was ready for a completely different kind of car. His name was Lee Iacocca, the son of Italian immigrants, a man who came from working-class roots, a man who knew the value of a dollar. Unlike many executives in Detroit, Iacocca understood young buyers, not from marketing reports, from life itself. He hadn't been far from young and broke himself not so long ago. He believed Ford needed something sporty, stylish, emotional, but also affordable enough for ordinary Americans. His idea sounded risky. Build a car that looked expensive, but wasn't. Build a car that looked fast, even if the buyer couldn't afford a massive engine. And most importantly, build a car people would dream about, that they'd talk about at work, that they'd show off to the neighbors. That would turn heads at every stoplight. Many Ford executives were deeply skeptical. Detroit had spent decades building enormous family cars. It was a proven formula. It made money. Why take the risk? Why would Americans suddenly want something smaller? But Iacocca kept pushing. He gathered data, ran surveys, proved his case with numbers, and eventually, Ford gave the green light. Ford engineers used parts from existing models to keep costs under control. The platform from the Ford Falcon, engines already in Ford's lineup. Every single decision mattered. The car had to look exciting without becoming too expensive to build. The designers worked under near impossible constraints. No more than 181 inches long, no more than 2,500 pounds, priced below $2,500. And despite all of that, the car had to look like a dream. Years of planning, hundreds of prototypes, endless arguments. And finally, Ford was ready. On April 17, 1964, Ford officially introduced the Mustang. America lost its mind. Ford launched one of the largest advertising campaigns in the history of the automotive industry. The Mustang appeared everywhere at once. Television, newspapers, radio, billboards lining every major highway, magazines, front covers. On that single day, April 17, 1964, the Mustang appeared simultaneously on the covers of both Time and Newsweek. Nothing like that had ever happened in the history of the car industry, and almost instantly, dealerships were flooded with customers. In some cities, crowds grew so large that traffic backed up outside Ford showrooms. Some buyers reportedly slept overnight outside dealerships. Others purchased Mustangs on their lunch break, without even stopping to discuss it with their families. One dealer in Texas told the story of placing a car in his window
A beautiful day,
and
a
having to lock
Mustang
the front
day.
doors.
Ford Mustang,
People were
practical
literally
enough for this
pressing
family
the
of five,
entrance. He
yet
had to
beautiful
organize
enough to
the
be
car
honored with
himself.
the Tiffany Gold
Ford
Medal
had
for
originally
excellence in
hoped to
American
sell over
design.
100,000 Mustangs
And
in the first
Mustang
year.
has many luxury
Instead,
features as
they
standard
sold over
equipment,
400,000.
including
Within
luxurious
18
bucket
months,
seats and rich
Ford had
vinyl
sold more than
upholstery,
1 million Mustangs. It became
full
one of the
wheel
greatest
covers,
success stories in the history
padded
of
instrument
automobile.
panel,
And the
and wall-to-wall
Mustang quickly
carpeting.
became something far greater than
There's room for a whole
transportation.
family
It became a lifestyle.
and an unexpectedly
Young Americans
spacious
saw
trunk.
themselves in it.
But the
Stylish,
happiest news
fast,
is Mustang's
vigorous.
unexpected
Suddenly,
price.
owning a
Only
Mustang meant something. It wasn't
$2,368
just a
FOB
car sitting in
Detroit.
the garage.
And with a
It
wide
was a
choice of
statement
options,
about who
Mustang
you
is
are.
excitingly
The car
versatile.
appeared in
It's
movies,
designed to
in
be
music
designed by
videos,
you.
in television shows.
This is Mustang,
Steve
an
McQueen,
exciting new breed of
James
car.
Bond,
See it at your Ford
Bullitt.
dealers now. Make
That
your
chase
every
through
day
the
an
streets of San
unexpectedly beautiful
Francisco in
day with
1968
Mustang.
became one of the most legendary scenes in the history of cinema. The Mustang represented a new version of America. Younger, louder, more confident in itself. The success of the Mustang shook Detroit to its core. General Motors panicked. Chrysler responded. Suddenly, every company wanted its own performance car. The muscle car era had officially begun. Horsepower became a national obsession. Bigger engines, louder exhausts, faster quarter miles. American streets transformed into battlefields of chrome and gasoline. Chevrolet introduced the Camaro. Dodge released aggressive new performance models. Pontiac created the GTO. Plymouth unleashed the Roadrunner. Detroit was no longer competing for transportation. It was competing for emotion, for passion, for the feeling of speed. And at the center of everything was the Mustang. Then came the legends. The GT350, the Mach 1, the Boss 302, the Boss 429, the Shelby Mustangs. Carroll Shelby, a former racing driver, a man with a damaged heart who kept asking his doctors to let him race just one more time, took a standard Mustang and turned it into something else entirely. The Shelby GT500 produced power that nobody expected from a production car. These weren't ordinary cars anymore. They were machines built for speed. Some were barely practical for everyday driving, but practicality didn't matter. The Mustang represented freedom, open highways, youth, American confidence at its absolute peak. By the late 1960s, the Mustang had become one of the most recognizable cars on Earth. They knew it in France, in Japan, in Australia. It needed no translation. Its shape spoke for itself. But America's golden age couldn't last forever. In 1973, everything changed. The oil crisis hit America with a brutality nobody had anticipated. OPEC nations declared an embargo. Oil supplies dried up almost overnight. Gas prices exploded. Long lines formed outside gas stations all across the country. Drivers waited for hours. Some stations ran out of fuel by noon and closed their doors. The government stepped in with rationing, odd and even days for filling up, based on the last digit of your license plate. For a country built on the idea of unlimited freedom of movement, it was a cultural earthquake. For the first time in decades, Americans began questioning the massive V8 cars they had always taken for granted. Suddenly, old muscle cars no longer looked exciting. They looked expensive, wasteful, irresponsible. Insurance companies raised rates sharply for performance vehicles. Young men under 25 were paying triple premiums. New environmental laws gutted horsepower across the board. Manufacturers were forced to fit catalytic converters. Engines grew weaker. Cars grew slower. In 1973, the Mustang 428 Cobra Jet produced 335 horsepower. A few years later, the top Mustang engine barely reached 140. Detroit was completely unprepared for any of it. The companies that had once dominated the world had built their entire identity on cheap fuel and unlimited power. And now, that world was vanishing, almost overnight. The muscle car era began to collapse. Some legendary models disappeared completely. Others survived only in name. The Mustang survived, but barely. By the late 1970s, many Americans believed the Mustang had lost its soul. The once legendary performance car had become smaller, slower, weaker. Some critics openly laughed at it. The Mustang 2, that's what they called the new version, small, soft, frightened, as if the car itself were ashamed of its past. One critic wrote, "Ford killed the Mustang. They just haven't made the official announcement yet." Meanwhile, Japanese manufacturers were taking over the American market. Toyota, Honda, Datsun. Their cars were reliable, fuel-efficient, affordable. They didn't break down every few months. They didn't drain your wallet at the pump. Detroit suddenly looked old, outdated, arrogant. Factories began shutting down. Entire neighborhoods surrounding Detroit slowly fell apart. The city that once built America was beginning to rot. Rust spread across abandoned factories. Empty parking lots replaced once busy assembly lines. People were leaving. Stores were closing. The once proud city of Detroit was becoming a symbol of decline. And many people believed American car culture would never recover. But somehow, the Mustang refused to disappear. Ford kept the name alive, even through its weakest years, even when it seemed pointless. Even as sales fell to their lowest levels ever, the name remained. And in the end, that decision would save the legend. Then something unexpected happened. America got nostalgic. People missed the old days. Real engines, real noise, real character. They missed the emotion that muscle cars once created. The smell of gasoline at a filling station on a Friday night. The sound of a V8 echoing off tunnel walls. The feeling of sitting behind the wheel of something that felt alive. Ford understood this perfectly. And in the 2000s, the Mustang returned to its roots. Retro styling, aggressive lines that echoed the original 1964 design, massive V8 engines. When the new Mustang debuted in 2005, the reaction was immediate. People stopped on the street to stare. Drivers made U-turns just to look again. They called their friends. "Have you seen the new Mustang?" Suddenly, the Mustang felt genuine again. A younger audience discovered it for the first time. An older generation fell in love with it all over again. The Mustang became more than nostalgia. It became proof that old American car culture still mattered. Car meets exploded all across the country. Social media created a brand new generation of Mustang fans. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Videos of a V8 roaring at full power were pulling millions of views. Once again, the Mustang stood for freedom. But the world is changing again. Electric cars are replacing gasoline engines. Governments around the world are moving against combustion engines. Europe has set a deadline to ban the sale of new gasoline-powered cars. China is pouring hundreds of billions into electrification. Ford released the Mustang Mach-E, an electric crossover carrying the name of a legend. The decision sparked a real debate. Some called it a betrayal. Others called it the only way to survive. The era that created the Mustang is slowly slipping away. The smell of gasoline, the roar of the engine, the vibration of the steering wheel at speed. All of it could become a memory. All of it could end up behind glass in a museum. But even now, more than 60 years later, the Mustang is still here, still loud, still emotional, still unmistakably American. Because the Mustang was never just a car, it was freedom on four wheels. A machine born during America's golden age, a symbol of highways, gasoline, rebellion, and speed. A symbol of an era when America believed nothing was impossible. when a young man from a working-class suburb could get behind the wheel and feel completely free. And maybe one of the last true symbols of old America. The America that built its dreams out of steel and chrome. The America where the road never ended. And as long as people still dream about speed, as long as there are those who hear a V8 roar and feel something stir inside, the Mustang will never truly disappear.